Alrighty, let's go ahead. I don't think I have a gavel or anything, although I do love a gavel, but we'll go ahead and call the meeting. Yeah, I might spill. Call the meeting of the Audit Committee for August to order. Want to do an approval of the agenda, and one thing that I do want to recommend we change is a discussion about the acting CFO and Ms. Wells moving on, and Marina as the replacement. So we want to talk about that in the agenda under, I guess, new business. And then our visitor, Ms. Sly, has not arrived. Oh, there she is. Okay, great. So Ms. Sly is here, looking fancy. So we'll keep her as a visitor in line. Any other amendments to the agenda?
Not for me.
It's ambitious.
Okay, ambitious. We'll see what we can cover. All right, next thing on the agenda is the invocation.
But you did not actually
Mr. Barr, I
approve
think
the, you didn't, there was no motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, apologies. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as it was amended.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So we have an approved agenda. Now, Mr. Barr, would you like to pray us into the meeting?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day you provided for us. We enjoy the respite from the heat. Thank you for our county. Thank you for our elected leaders and all the work they do to make this a great place to live. We thank you for the staff that supports them. We thank you for Don in his new position. Ask you to bless and help him. So as we meet tonight to talk about our business, we ask that you'll grant us wisdom beyond our own and help us to do the best we can to grow and build our economy in a wonderful direction and to honor you. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Under Chairwoman's remarks, I'll start with just offering a word of thanks to Stephanie Wells. Ms. Wells, if you'll notice, is sitting in the audience instead of here on the dais because she has moved on to a role with Suffolk, right? City of Suffolk. So we appreciate all your years and good work, and especially as we've gotten this audit committee stood up. Forever you will be a part of that, and my sincere appreciation for all the help with really forwarding the vision of this group. Really appreciate it so much. Today also is Mr. Robertson's first meeting as our new county administrator, so many, many thanks, as he's wearing more hats than I think he thought possible and working through everything. And I know that we've chosen an interim assistant administrator, Ms. Robertson did, as well as a permanent assistant administrator who will start in September. So
Cool.
Give him a little bit of grace and peace over the next month and a half. Certainly a big task as we go through the audit of our financials and all of the strategic planning that we're undergoing and attempting to do and accomplish in the upcoming months. Because as we all know, anytime after January, you get kind of waylaid by budget and other things, right? And then you're kind of on pause. So this fall, we're hoping to get lots of great work done. And this audit committee is integral to that and the success of that. And I will be reporting, what we come up with and our recommendations and our questions and our comments to the board after this meeting. We can decide at the end if we're still going to go with our every other month cadence. Think about that for me too. It was really nice over the summer to kind of skip July, and that was nice. But if we think we need to also meet in September, then you all let me know, because I know this agenda is pretty heavy this afternoon. All right, so those are my remarks. Can I get a motion to approve the June 2nd minutes?
Prior to that,
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I would like to suggest that our next meeting, whenever that is, that we have a brief review of last year's audit.
Okay.
At the beginning of the season, so that we have an idea what we're looking for in seeing improvements.
And that will be about a year from when we last reviewed the audit, so that's good. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, so move to, anybody want to move to approve the June 2nd minutes?
Chair Roger, just a couple thoughts on item 7 on the last minutes. Correct as written, but I think add a few things to it to really kind of drive the point home. Paragraph 7B, subparagraph, says staff was able to negotiate fees, costs, which result in cost savings for the county. I think the real important thing here is the staff was able to extend and renegotiate fees and costs on the current agreement. Correct? And then, importantly, this will provide the county time to conduct a detailed ERP procurement planning and market research. I think that's really kind of the key takeaway from what we boiled down here this past spring on the ERP review.
Okay, so Mr. Robertson's still doing our minutes. Do you have the intent?
So the last sentence, Mr. Robertson, which should read, I suggest we read, this will provide the county time to conduct a detailed ERP procurement plan and market research.
Gotcha.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes with the correction that Mr. Stanton recommended.
Motion. I move that we approve the minutes as
Okay.
amended.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
You guys good? Okay. Okay. Well, without further ado, Ms. Sly, come on up. I know that, Mr. Bond, do you want to talk about the process? I think you gathered some comments and some questions, and I understand Ms. Sly's been doing some preparation since you had
So
those
yes,
set
we're
up.
back at our March, April, May, June meeting, where we talked about learning more about the treasurer's office. The task for every board member was to submit their questions they would like to see addressed. I collected those, cleaned them up a little bit, got rid of duplicates, gave them to our county administrator, who then shared them and passed them on, 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Yes, I got them on the 24th. I have not had a chance to answer them all, but I have got, I think, 11 of the 13 answered. I do not have a whole lot of time. Reason being, we have a due date tomorrow for business, personal property, and we just sent out past due or reminder notices. So our phone is ringing off the hook. So I really need to get back there to go back to help answering the phone like I have been. So the one that I really wanted to look at, and I printed it out for y'all, and then I'll go back and get the first 2 questions when things calm down some in the office. But the one I wanted to point out for y'all was number 13, where you ask about the bank reconciliations and everything coming back. And at this time, I decided not to take that back into the office. And this is the email that I had sent to Don and Stephanie. And I included the email from Randy that he sent me last May, where it states that they had a board resolution that it would stay with the finance office. So, but it lists my reasons for not wanting to take it back. And then, I like I said, I included Randy's email with it as well.
Okay.
And
I mean, as you know, we're at crossroads, right? With you're fairly new still, and Ms. Wells transitioning out, and Marina is stepping in as an interim. Don, I guess I know you're taking minutes, but I guess I'll ask you. You guys have met recently. I mean, both of you, and maybe we can call on Stephanie too. You guys have met as a team, right? And feel like all the duties are covered and the handoffs between the finance office and the treasurer's office?
Well, we did meet prior to her leaving. We're appreciative Stephanie was actually able to secure additional assistance. And primarily, I believe he's working on those specific tasks that were going to be transferred back to the treasurer's office. Should Ms. Sly desire to take those back. So, to the best of my knowledge, and I rely on Marina and Stephanie to fill in the gaps on the specifics, but those duties should be, again, attached to that person as we speak. Now, he's not a full-time person with the county yet. He is, that function is outsourced currently. And so we will need to look at how we continue to do that moving forward, whether we bring him into the fold or if we bring someone else into the fold to do that work specifically.
So like a 1099, just a
It's
contract
contract
employee?
employee, yes.
What's his name again?
Christopher.
Christopher. So Christopher is part-time, outsourced, and is doing bank reconciliation and collection cash reporting, and still under your office then?
Correct.
Isn't he full-time for the
Well,
most part?
he's full-time.
He's working full-time hours, I believe. But
Okay. So, I mean, just kind of given that comment, do you have any concerns here, Marina?
I think our main concern is that our office currently is being a little stretched out. And we would like to have, I would like to have Christopher helping on finance office duties. I focus on those duties, especially for the upcoming audit and year-end tasks that we're currently working on. So that's not a concern, that we don't really get really able to continue performing those duties.
So is that, Julie, something that you're never gonna take back?
I do not plan on taking it back right now. I'm not saying never, I'm just saying as of right now, no, because if whoever is in that position leaves, then I'm still at a point where in my office, I don't have the time to be doing that plus my regular duties until a person is found and trained.
So Don and Stephanie, I guess, where does this FTE sit? I mean, obviously we have a contractor that's helping us get the work done, but where does the FTE sit? Does it sit in the treasurer's office or the finance office?
currently, it's in the finance office, but it is not an FTE with regard to your pay and class plan.
Right.
So it's an FTE in that we have outsourced the function, but I'm assuming you used funding was it from a person or did you use contracted labor?
So if he was taken on full-time in a position, we could move him over to the treasurer's office, and then we would have a place to put our person in our office. Well, I'm sorry, our Marina. So the county's office is, yes. So basically, he's trained and ready to be transferred over to her office. But if she's not going to take him on to do that role, then we need to have him do the other tasks that our Marina needs help with. So it really comes down to who's going to be doing the treasurer duties moving forward. You know, I was thinking after our conversation earlier in the year that July 1, everything would be taken back into the treasurer's office, which is why we made Christopher available. But if that's not going to be the case, then a new plan needs to be made.
So Bob, is that an option that these duties, I mean, are these mandatory that the treasurer's office perform these duties? No?
And I was just going to make one suggestion, just for going forward. We're in the process of attempting to hire a new finance director.
Right.
And perhaps that person, whoever it may be, may have some insight into a solution that the group presently doesn't have. Much like we're also looking to hire a procurement agent. Well, the new finance director may have some ideas on procurement that Stephanie and I did not come up with in the process. So I mean, it's in the short term. So it's not that we're saying we're going to hire somebody first of the year. We're going to hire somebody as quickly as we can. Or when I say we, the client will wait.
And
So
Julie
I
said
think-
it's not never, it's just not
Yeah,
now,
right. So I
too.
think-
It sounds like
so
that
when-
could change
when
as well.
Whoever this person may be, may have some insight as to solutions to some of these issues that we just haven't looked at.
And this, Madam Chair, I seem to see that there are three things. One, we're in a hiring mode, but the comment says the primary reason are that the reconciliation for the last fiscal year remain incomplete. And I know there's the process of doing that because monies carry over. Okay. What date do you think the reconciliation will be completed? And now you have to have it completed for the audit.
So, Brenda, do you mind if I answer? So, the reconciliations are done. It's the work in the financial system where things need to be posted accurately is not completed. That has to be done by Julie's office. We cannot do that. As soon as she has gotten all of those corrections made, then everything will be complete. But as it stands, the fiscal year FY25 is still open, waiting on corrections from her office. But all the reconciliations, we know where all the transactions need to be posted to. It's just not within our department to be able to do that. She has to do that. Add to that a lot of the duties that the finance office was helping with, from what I've been told, there's ways that we were able to do that before I left that have now been cut off. So if you want the finance office to continue to do that for you, you've got to give them that access back. So, we need to make a plan. Y'all need to make a plan of if that's what they're going to continue to do, give them the ability to do that. So if that's where we're going, if that's where y'all are going, that it's going to stay in the finance office, then those roles and those ways of getting access to those records need to be put back in the finance office. So, but yes, the reconciliations are done, waiting for corrections.
So I guess that would be two questions to you, Ms. Sly. Number one, when will the reconciliations be posted accurately in the finance system? And then number two, just speak to if there was a change in access and if you can restore that.
Okay, the corrections, as they are sending them to us, we are correcting them. Jennifer is, which is over there, she is sending them to us and letting us know, like she sent us some information that a couple of the batches for permits didn't show in the system being posted, so we went back, we've got them posted now. So as she's sending them to us, what's missing, we are working on getting them posted and giving her the information back as she's sending it to us. And the access, the only thing that really changed was I was messing around with Marina's in the bank trying to make some adjustments to it, so I've got to go back, and the bank took her access completely. She has access, she just doesn't have a role. I have to go back in there and reassign her role back to her because they were trying to help me make some corrections and everything. But the only other thing that changed in the access is the EDIs. And I changed that after Stephanie left, and I had it to come to my office. And when the EDIs have came in, we have pulled the information, downloaded it, and we sent it to the finance department. So that they can, what they've typically done is they have sent us a PDF with the accounts, the org and objects to post it to and how much to post it to. And the EDIs are typically like the reimbursement from the comp board and any money that comes from the state, which it comes for various reasons that we don't get the information for. So Jennifer gives us that information and we post it through cash receipts so that it's easy to track on the bank reconciliations. So we have sent them everything that's came in since I changed that. It has been sent to Jennifer.
Can you just speak to the reason why it's better to print it instead of having electronic access to the EDI?
Well, there's only one login for the system. So only one person can have login, and it's linked now to my state login.
Okay. And remind me what an EDI stands for. What does that mean?
Oh, I don't know.
Electronic data
I've
entry.
always just, it's just been wires or money coming in,
Money coming in,
EFTs. Yes, it's funds coming into the county from the Commonwealth.
From the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so there seems, you guys help me reconcile this, and I know this is a public forum and a recorded meeting, but Ms. Wells, there just seems to be a little, something's not quite meshing for me. If you say that all the corrections have been made and sent to the treasurer's office, and Ms. Lai is saying that they're entered into the financial system as soon as they're done, you say they're all complete, you say you're taking care of them as soon as they're done, you're saying they're actually not done. Like, actually not entered.
You know, I have been gone for a couple of weeks, but maybe that's a better question for Marina at this point, but I am not aware of them all being completed.
I have spoke with Jennifer last Friday, I believe, and there were still outstanding items of, her sending batch corrections and other corrections that have not been posted from prior months.
Yeah, I'm thinking we may need to sit down
Yeah,
and talk
that's-
about a couple of items, because even with the EDI access, I think there's some discrepancies there in terms of what level of access Jennifer had and what she was able to do. So.
Yeah,
we'll glad to
I was going to
sit down
email
with
you today, but it's just not been time today to send you an email to finish talking about that.
I probably would have seen it. I just got back.
Okay, so Julie, Marina, Don, you guys circle up before we have our next meeting, and
Yeah.
we'll follow up certainly on that. I'm sure there'll be other follow-ups from the novel that you've written. Thank you for answering some of these questions. Given that Ms. Lai feels like she needs to go and answer phones because they're so busy, is there anything as you all are flipping through? I see you kind of flipping through some of them. Anything that where you'd like in-person clarification or any one question that you feel real strongly about that you'd like to address before she goes?
I'll need some time to read it, but I do have one comment to make. This is not one of those. We can't afford, this county cannot afford to have a bad audit. And passing the buck isn't gonna count. The citizens of this county expect us to do our jobs. That's all I've got to say.
Are you saying that I'm not doing my job? Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
that right now, all I hear is conflict. I don't hear a solution. And you're part of the process of getting a solution. You are an elected official of this county. You have a fiduciary responsibility to this county.
And I am doing my job. I am doing my job.
So I think the audit, I think what Mr. Grice is saying is the audit is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to make sure that it's clean, that we get a good audit, because obviously that has ramifications if we don't.
More important than that, it's gonna have implications on the amount of money that we end up paying in interest,
Right.
because we have major projects ahead of us.
Credit rating, when you go to borrow a bunch of money, obviously, you guys all know that, it affects the rating and how we're able to borrow money, so. It's just a critical time. I also think it's a critical time when you have so much turnover in an organization. I mean, you can, like Mr. Robertson, although he's been here almost as long as I've been alive, working for LOI, not really, but close. And then with Ms. Wells moving on and, just other things, it's turnover, right? So sometimes there's like missed handoffs and communication and, again, the audit's a big deal. I don't need to tell you guys that because it's a lot of work for you, with you ladies and gentlemen, so.
And to your point, that's one of the things that we want to ensure that we don't have so many handoffs that things get lost in the translation, or that we don't have efficiencies because we're short-staffed, Julie's short-staffed.
Right.
We need the process to be as efficient as possible so that we're maximizing the staffing that we currently have.
Right.
So, again, I think we need to sit down, talk through a couple of things just to make sure we're all not just on the same sheet of music, but that we're capitalizing on those efficiencies and making sure that things get done in an appropriate manner.
Okay.
One other thing.
Yeah.
There, I think someone had contacted you because it was taking a while to get their payments posted.
I did hear from a citizen that they had paid Isle of Wight and Town of Smithfield property tax, et cetera, real estate tax on the same day. And Smithfield's was cashed like within 2 days, and ours was still at that point 3-4 weeks out and had not been.
We had 52,279 bills go out between real estate and personal property for June. Town of Smithfield had about 4,300, not quite 4,300. So there's a big gap in the amount of work, and I've been in their office and they have 2 clerks, 2 front people. We have 3 full-time and 2 part-time. So we don't have many more positions than they have for quite a large number of bills. We worked very diligently. The staff, because of budget concerns, no one except me and the chief deputy worked overtime or outside the normal business hours to stay within budget on their pay, because from the previous part-time employees, there was already, they were over budget on those. So we were trying to, pay attention to the budget, and for about 5 weeks there, I worked about 50 hours a week, coming in the mornings and staying at night, trying to work on getting payments posted to avoid it being so long. But we did have everything posted and all the mail caught up by the 26th of June. And I know that sounds like a long time, but considering the amount of mail that came in, I think we had like 8 or 9 of the long trays of mail throughout the whole time that came in, and that's a lot of mail.
It is. So this may be a very simple example, but my mind goes back to a change that you made shortly after you took office,
lockbox.
and that's the lockbox. So I'm like thinking, okay, was Treasurer Sly trying to save money? Did she want to just get a handle on everything coming in? Why was that change made? It seems like it's not helping you or the productivity of your staff if you're having to do 52,000 bills.
And that is one of the questions y'all asked in your thing, and I did reply that when the lockbox was started, it was great. It did exactly what we wanted it to do. It cut down the amount of time that we had to sit at the desk and post payments. It was only people who insisted on sending their payments here. Other people sent them there, and they keyed it, sent us a file to import into the system, and it went along smoothly. Well, as with everything, here comes COVID-19, and everybody had to be 6 feet apart. It changed their working dynamics. We couldn't, they didn't have as many staff members to post, and I think they were picking up new people, but they just got to the point where some people, they said that their mail didn't get there for 2 months. Now, I know that it comes to us late like that, but we're not scanning envelopes, and envelopes are critical. When someone calls and says, but I mailed it on time, we can go back and look at the postmark on the envelope. The lockbox stopped doing it, or they would throw them all in one big pile, and with no regard to which payment it went to. So we couldn't, unless they had put their name on the return address part, we didn't know whose was whose.
Yeah, so I don't pretend to know how to do your job, and I
But
appreciate
it
you
was
being here.
not
So is there another lockbox? I mean, is there another productivity or time saver that, we could help
Well,
you with so that your people aren't having to?
The way Tyler Cashiering sold themselves to us was that we could run the stub that we sent, if they returned that, run the stub and the check through, and it would process it and give us that same import file, and we could just import it in and would be done. But it's not been that simple. I mean, Tyler Payments does not even work exactly like it's supposed to. We can't just let it apply the funds like we have told it to apply. Some of them we have to go back, and it's not been the program they told us it was going to be. And I don't know if it's because of the twice a year billing or what, but we are continuing to work on it with hopes that we'll get it to where it's an efficient system that we can just run it through, and, you know, people's checks will be processed within a few days of receiving them.
So is that another follow-up meeting that we need to support you with? As a contract that's held with the county with Tyler Cashiering and Tyler Payments, is there any kind of support you need there if it's not functioning like it should?
We've been dealing with them on this.
That's
I don't know that
ongoing
it's,
support from
yeah.
IT. They're in contact with them almost daily in terms of trying to work through some of the bugs, but I thought they had gotten down to just literally one or two outstanding items as it relates to the way that's working. Or is it still not working?
My staff hasn't told me that it's changed any. So, and we even had something, I don't know what happened in Tyler Payments, but it cut off at 10 o'clock on the night taxes were due instead of midnight. So we had to go back in, reverse all the payments from 10 o'clock to midnight, and apply those payments again without penalty and interest, and the overage went to their second half. Or if it was real estate, it got applied and it's been sent back to them. But we did catch it, and we went back and fixed it before anybody ever called and said, hey, wait a minute, I had to pay penalty and interest. We've already, if they go back and look, we've already corrected it in the system, and they have a credit on their bill that's due in December for personal property.
So again, just to close out that point, and I'll make this my question that I asked about, thank you. Are there other lockbox companies? Would you consider a different?
I don't know. There was a lot of complaints about it going outside of the county.
Complaints by?
The citizens. They did not like the fact that the money goes outside of the county and then comes back in. It gets mailed somewhere else instead of coming to us.
Yeah, I don't care. I pay my mortgage somewhere in North Carolina, I think, and they actually pay the taxes. Who knows where all the money goes, right? As long as it lands in the right place and I don't get interest applied. But, obviously just know that with your staff,
and I think that
the next time money comes in, it's going to be a lot again, right? In weeks and weeks, and that's untenable.
The lockbox that we were using was the lockbox through Bank of America, which is who we have for a bank. So, they didn't say whenever I talked to them and told them that I wanted to discontinue using the lockbox, they didn't say, well, wait a minute, we have another option. We have another lockbox that we could send it to that appears to be their only lockbox. And it's not efficient because it was a lot of work to go back to correct.
So all of Bank of America only has one lockbox?
They're
a pretty big bank.
I don't think we were going through Bank of America. Lockbox was a separate contractor.
I don't know, because when I talked to Kevin with Bank of America, he says that these are the fees that are charged for using the lockbox, and this is what each one of them broke down for and everything.
And then you want to talk about citizens, if they're upset that our money's going outside of the county. Bank of America closed their branch, not in Smithfield any longer, so really all of our money's outside if we're still using Bank of America, right? So,
That's
at what point between the finance office and the treasurer's office, at what point do we go out for RFP to choose a new bank that actually does have a branch in our county?
That is on the radar. I was trying to wait until we get things settled some between my office and the finance office until, it's settled, because it's a big process. It's not a small process, and we don't need to be sitting there short-staffed in two major departments and components to doing it and trying to make that change when both offices are short-staffed at one point or another. So I'm just, but that is something I'm going to do. And
Like after the audit?
if we can get the offices staffed, then I would. But like I said, I don't want to throw a big task like that in there between my office and the finance office and it be short-staffed the way it is. So,
Okay.
'cause it's.
Well, that was my question. Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sly, I empathize with your frustration and workload and all the elbow grease you're going to throw at solving some of these problems. Keep up the hard work there. It's appreciated. You mentioned here, and we sort of alluded to this, Ms. Roundtree alluded to this, you mentioned here implementing a new operating system. I had the privilege of sitting with the county staff as we talked about the ERP strategy going forward. I guess I would just ask, and this relates to questions 1 and 2 as well.
Yes.
Sometime over, in the next, 3 or 4 months, if you could take a half hour or 60 minutes a week, just carve out and think about what a clean sheet solution look like in terms of, strategic processes that would make some of these headaches go away. Because one of the things we have to do with the county now is start developing these system requirements for ERP. And this is our chance to go out and tell the world, this isn't working for us, this is what we need. So if you, like I said, the point is take 30 or 60 minutes each week over the course of the next few months and just try to back away from the excitement and just think, clear-headed, what would a better future state look like and how can I translate that into an ERP solution? We're at an inflection point, as you know, in the world in terms of information technology with artificial intelligence, machine learning. We're really at the limit of what we can imagine. We're not limited really by technology anymore. So if you could just kind of maybe roll that into your work week, 30 minutes of clear thinking about what the future state would look like, so that when we get to writing that ERP system requirement, we could really nail it and make some of these headaches go away.
Yes.
Awesome. Mr. Baum?
Number 6, we asked about your internal controls process, and I don't know how to understand the response.
Okay.
Not questioning it, just don't understand it, that's all.
Deputy ones are my frontline clerks. They can, whenever, throughout their day, they will receive the payments, they key those payments into the system, and they batch them out at the end of the day. They can submit those through the check scanners for Bank of America. That is all they can do. They can do deposits into Cash Pro, which is Bank of America's site. They can put the cash payments or the payments into the system and create a batch. They can't do any others. A Deputy 2, which is typically my collections, the 2 collections people, they can put in the cash receipts. They can only deposit just like the Deputy 1s can. However, the Deputy 2s can post the batches, daily work batches, at the end of the day. And then the Deputy 3, she can do deposits. She can put in cash receipts. She can post batches. The Deputy 2s can post current month and previous month. So they can post August and anything that may need to be posted back to July. They can do those. The Deputy 3, the Chief Deputy, and myself can put in cash receipts, post all the payments, all the batches in any month, regardless. A Deputy 3 can put in deposits to the bank through the Cash Pro system. They can approve wires, set up wires. She does the ACHs, which are the automatic payments that come from people's checking accounts. She does those every month and on the due dates, the ones that are set up on due dates. We have some that are every other week that we have to draw their funds. She does all those. Those 3, the Deputy 3, the Chief Deputy, and myself, we can pretty much do everything with the bank. And she can do almost the same things we can. None of us post our own work. Even the wires, transfers, unless there is no one else available, we do not approve anything that we have done. That's why we have 3 of us that can do it, so that there should always be at least 2 of us there to be able to do it, so that no one approves their own. So that's the biggest thing for us is we just don't take it into our own hands to say, yes, this works, and go ahead and do it. Even my state stuff, I give it to someone else to post the batch that goes into the system. I don't post that myself.
So I translate that as the receipt, badge posting, the deposit capabilities, the specific job delineations, not posting your own work as your internal control process to ensure the best you can that something is not personally influenced, I guess. Okay. I understand that right.
Yes.
Thank you. And then what's the school personnel meeting at the bottom there?
Liesel and them, they only have access to school accounts in the bank. So they can't go into anything county, social services, nothing like that.
So that's another internal control kind of process that stands. And that's done by permission in the system, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, there's only a few spots in the in the schools system for Munis that we are allowed to access.
Both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Marina, did you want to follow up? Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank
So I think, sorry, before you walk off. Again, I'll take your perspectives at the end of the meeting, but it would be helpful, I think, to see you again, and I'm sure we'll have lots of things to talk about with the audit and things. So if we wanted to meet in September, could you come back?
I think so. I would have to look at the calendar and see what staff is off,
Right.
because that's
So I
what we
think
did.
the first Monday in September is Labor Day. So pretty sure our next meeting would be the Monday after Labor Day. So
Okay, I'll look at the calendar and
wouldn't be
see.
on the holiday. But, okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
That'll give us time to do this.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, my suggestion to you, we sort of plan that, because I think there's probably going to be another round of questions off of this, too.
Off this.
Same kind of thing, collect feedback.
So give it to her ahead of
Have
time.
another responses we digest and understand would
Right.
be my 2 cents.
It is really tough. Appreciate you guys being patient. It is tough to be handed a document of this size 3 minutes before the meeting, and try to simultaneously be on live television and in a meeting and try to read and digest what the answers are. So beg your forgiveness there. We'll look at Ms. Sly attending on the September 8th meeting, so pending you wanting to go ahead and have one in September instead of skipping a month. But I do think there's plenty to talk about. Alrighty, well, that was our report and our visitor. I don't have any items under old business unless anyone had, any new information about, I know you're working on the ERP system, Mr. Stanton. You called Virginia Beach and talked to them about, the whole way they accept money and have their nonprofit agency that assists with animal control, et cetera. So I didn't know if you had any old business to bring up.
Unfortunately, Chair Roundtree, the trail has gone cold. I did contact an attorney in the Virginia Beach City Attorney's Office, who was the advising attorney for the police department, under which the animal shelter is organized, but she couldn't answer any questions about 501c3 kind of stuff. She couldn't answer questions about labor issues, so on and so forth. So she said contact this other attorney in the Virginia Beach Police Department, Virginia Beach City Government's Office, and I contacted the attorney, or I attempted to email that attorney and leave messages, and I've got no response back. So I'm pushing what we here. I apologize. I will continue to try there. Break. Regarding old business, I just want to remind Ms. Marina, we did have some pretty good ERP discussions going with Ms. Wells and the IT team and Mr. Robertson. And I'd like to keep the ERP flame alive because I'm not sure how many IT systems you have procured in your days, but I can tell you they're painful. And we have to get that system requirement right. We've got about a 3-year window, I think, was what we decided to get that system requirement done. So I just ask you to kind of keep that on your strategy corner, in the corner of your whatever notebook you keep every day. You get a strategy corner. Be thinking about the ERP system requirement, and it'll be here before we know it. And the problems like Ms. Sly talked about, I'm sure all the other elected officials and their departments, they get headaches around, automation that can be solved with, at scale, can be solved with information technology. So I'm just going to welcome you by asking you to just kind of keep the ERP flame alive here in the county. This is one way to get some efficiencies that Mr. Robertson's referred to.
Great. All right, moving on to new business. The first thing that we wanted to talk about was audit preparation, staffing, and duty changes. So before we actually talk about that, I will entertain a motion to appoint/welcome Marina to the CFO position slot as the interim replacement for Ms. Wells. Anybody want to do that?
Being next to her, I would say I move that she be added to the board as discussed.
Great.
Second motion.
So I'm here to help.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Welcome. Thank you. Happy to have you. All right.
We are.
All right. So audit. I don't know, Stephanie or Dawn, who wants to come to the podium and just again, Stephanie, we really appreciate you coming back. You didn't have to. You've already left. We pull you back. I'm sure Marina was happy to see you and greeted you with hugs and sloppy kisses, right? So I don't know if we want to. No, just one hug. Okay. Just wanted to.
I mean, I might have given her the sloppy kisses.
Okay. Just wanted to talk about audit and maybe where you see our blind spots and. I know obviously because you're a conscientious person and have done such a great job for the county that you prepared us as well as you can for turnover.
I hope so.
Yeah, so maybe we could just talk a little bit about that and what support you need from us and the board to make it through the audit.
So I think the biggest difficulty right now is finding the talent, and the other piece of it is knowing that it appears that the treasurer's duties are going to stay in the finance office. That portion of the treasurer's duties, I should say, is going to stay in the finance office. That at least gives a little more direction to the finance department for, yes, we need to keep this person to this role. Now we've got to go and find another way to attack year-end. Because you can't let up on that day-to-day activity that's coming through the treasurer's office, or we're going to be in a bind for 26. And Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that gives you a little more direction as far as I've got to get somebody in here now that is going to be focused on the ACFR, because I can't rely on Chris or Jennifer to do that, which is who we were trying to, those two people we were trying to free up, one or the other, to be able to do that, in addition to finding the financial analyst, in addition to finding the finance director. So, and I've agreed to stay on to try to help with purchasing and smoothing some of the other things that Marina's having difficulty with on the, just for questions or whatever. I actually haven't been asked a lot, so I guess Don and Marina are handling it very well. So other than the procurement piece of it and one or two other items, they seem to be doing okay, but the truth of the matter is they need some help in the finance department, especially with keeping the treasurer's duties. We were trying to give her a gift by giving her this person who's been trained, go forth and prosper, and now let us focus on the ACFR. But now that's going to stay in the finance department, and so that's going to be even more crucial to get that ACFR person in there.
And to be clear, you just learned that about 20 minutes ago.
So I knew that there was an email sent back that had the text from Mr. Keaton's email, But the question was whether or not the position was gonna stay in finance or move back to treasurer's department. And since that email, we have had discussions with Julie about transferring that all back over as of July 1. So that was what we were moving towards, even with me leaving. And since that didn't happen, we're gonna reconvene and they'll figure out something. To be fair, we did already call 1 or 2 accounting agencies and they don't have available staff either. We used one external accounting agency and the staff that they sent us were not at the level that we needed them to be for act for work. So we have been trying over the past several months to fill that talent hole that we have in the finance department. Of course, I only gave a 30-day notice, so that 30-day turnaround was not quite enough time to really nail everything down. But I know Marina's been working towards that. And of course, with Don trying to fill the finance director role as well, so. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your question or if I rambled on. Was there?
Oh, that's fine. I was wondering if there were any blind spots for the audit or anything that concerns either of you.
So getting those corrections done by the treasurer's office is a big one. Whether or not the findings that y'all will review again from last year's ACFR or in the management letter, whether or not those items will be cleared up for the 25 fiscal year. That blind spot to me is saying, no, I don't think they're going to be cleared up yet. Will that carry into 26? That's going to depend on how much has developed and some of the treasurer's office deficiencies. Knock on wood, there haven't been any deficiencies on the finance office side. We haven't seen anything on the school side. We haven't seen anything pop up in DSS, but to be fair, we don't control anything with DSS. So it's really, has the treasurer and the treasurer's office and the staff there gotten up to speed on everything that they need to be doing? I know Julie cares and I know she's trying, but there's just a lot there that needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah.
What's the big picture audit schedule?
We have it in our notebook.
So that's the old audit schedule. I'm not sure if there's a new one for the FY25 audit. That was 24, I believe. It should be 24 audit.
Have we had the preliminary meetings?
We did have a April, was it April? Robinson Farmer Cox came in April, and did some testing. Was it April?
No, I thought it was.
June? Was it? Okay, it was June. I'm sorry. Time flies when you're getting old.
So a lot of the work starts in October. I mean, if it holds true to other years, we're kind of looking at a past schedule.
Mid-August is so when I brought up the last meeting, skipping September and October, November meetings for the audit committee because the finance department is going to be so busy. I think y'all could get away with September, but October and November they're going to be slammed. You can still have the audit committee meetings, but I don't know that the finance director for either school or the county is really going to have time to devote, especially if there's anything that you need.
So October, November, finance.
They're the big,
Finance people won't attend. Well, that's fine. We have plenty of CIP and growth
Right.
stuff to talk about.
Right.
October, November. But if we had a September meeting, you could make it September 8th. Yeah.
And I know the treasurer's office will be slammed the 1st of December because of their first payment, their tax real estate payment.
Yeah, I was just trying to look back at my
Just from your experience, Devin, when it's mentioned, it's not necessarily a fault, but it's mentioned in one year, but it carries over to the second, doesn't that have some impact on?
Only if it rises to the level of materiality. That's the biggest issue. If it's just something that ends up in a management letter, not necessarily, no. If the auditor finds something materially deficient, then that's a problem. So I don't think there was any materiality issues in the audit on the treasurer's side yet for the last audit. I don't think it was material. I think it was all in the management letter. Was it school? Yes, right. School nutrition had an item, and from what I've heard, they've cleaned that up. So hopefully that won't be a finding this year.
Very good. Appreciate you coming back.
Sure, no problem.
On your way back,
Mhm.
did you come 460?
Yes,
Did you stop at Dairy Queen and get a chocolate dip ice cream?
I live right there, so I still live in Windsor, so I haven't gone too far yet.
Every time I go out to eat in Windsor or Suffolk, Stephanie is there. Always.
Which one of us is stalking the
I
other?
don't know, but it's so funny. When Glenn says, "Oh, which one is Stephanie again?" I'm like, "You know, the girl we always see at the restaurant." And she's always there. All right. Any other questions about staffing, duty changes? I know it's been a lot. Audit prep.
So
Any
ongoing.
concerns? Mr. Robertson, anything else?
No, that is ongoing. Stephanie left us, I think, in a really good place.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say.
Yeah,
Well, she left us, but she left us in a really good
I
place.
could have gone a different direction.
No. But, you know, as has been noted, there's a lot that's gonna be coming up in the short term, and so, Marina's done a fantastic job handling the day-to-day stuff. But we know that monster's right around the corner, and so, we gotta get some help in there, whether we outsource it or however we get the help, so we'll continue to work on that.
Okay, so if any of you guys know any accountants, especially with local government experience, let us know. All right, so number 2 or B on the new business agenda is the growth rate study. So I know since we last met, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
So since our last meeting, maybe even before our last meeting, I'm not sure, the Tischler Rice study was commissioned by the county last July 1st to support budget, but also just appropriate growth management. Pretty sure it was in response to all the talk, right, about what numbers are right, how things are going, what kinds of things do we need in the future, which then, downstream affects how much we borrow, what we build, all the things. They're all really interrelated. So we went out for bid. Tischler Rice took a look at different growth rate scenarios, and I had sent you all prior to this meeting, actually quite some time ago. I can look at the date if you need me to, but I had sent, not to you, but to these guys, the draft Tischler Rice report that came out on a Friday in April prior to the draft Tischler Rice report that then was presented early that next week to the Planning Commission. Because if you'll recall, when we asked for a growth task force, it was, I'm going to use this word because it's how I feel, relegated to the Planning Commission and rolled into the entire comprehensive plan 5-year review, right? So we're all pretty clear on the fact that a comprehensive plan is a vision for 20 years. Every 5 years, we did that in 2020. Every 5 years, dust it off, right? It is supposed to be a living, breathing document that we use every day. I'm sure Amy Ring does. I'm sure Don does. Every 5 years, you're supposed to revise it. Make sure, especially after COVID, oh my gosh, it's a great reason, right, in and of itself to revise, because we completed that in 2020. It's 5 years later, and the world is different. So Amy Ring, Ms. Ring, did have the Planning Commission, as well as a working group of citizens that worked through the comprehensive plan review. The review. And so she's been accomplishing that work over about the last year or so. I think it probably started last July. Tischler Rice again came in the spring and presented their draft study, again that the county paid for and commissioned, to support some of the comprehensive plan review, aka what I had intended to be the growth task force. And so I sent you all both of those drafts because, I'll just start. What one of the reasons that I asked you all in our last meeting to extend or expand your purview, if you will, or our charter, what we want to say we help with and look at, is because, let's face it, last meeting we decided we're not going to stand up an internal audit committee. We're not going to go back and review every purchase that purchasing makes. We're not going to go into departments and check and make sure that they're buying the right number of staplers. You know, whatever internal controls and audit might look like, we decided that wasn't where we really wanted to focus right now. So I had moved our meetings to every other month. We were starting to work through some of the things we were looking at. Now I think, given some of these questions and all the things we got going in the audit, maybe it makes sense to go back to every month. But again, if you recall last meeting, we extended our charter and said, you know, we're a smart group of concerned citizens and board members, and what we'd like to try to do is double check the assumptions and assertions that the growth study took a look at, right? So I did forward both of those drafts to you all for your review. I know Mr. Stanton gave me an executive summary of his, look over of that. And so I wanted to have a discussion and kind of see where to go from here, see what your concerns were after having really looked at the documentation from the Tischer-Weiss study. And I'll add, after the county paid for a study to model growth rates, right? Like 0.8% population growth, what would 2% growth look like? What would 3% people growth, population growth look like? And then balanced with some scenarios. What would it look like if commercial growth was X percentage and then X and grew? Or what would the financials, quite frankly, look like if commercial growth just held steady, right? You remember that part from when you reviewed the study? Yeah. So it was like population going up, modeling, and then commercial growth either staying the same / stagnant versus going up. So that's what I kind of wanted help with, is just kind of your comments and review about that process and about the study. I will add again that the schools, since we commissioned our study, it always has been kind of a thing. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's always been kind of a rub that there's the Weldon Cooper population estimates and how they apply to schools. The schools had gone to one consultant to look at enrollment and student capacity, and so they were kind of going this way with their projections, and we're kind of going this way, right? In our past, we're not meeting in the middle. The schools did also employ Tischer-Weiss to do their enrollment and student population and capacity study. That was supposed to have been completed last Thursday. I think they're really hoping that they have their report by this Thursday, the 7th, so that Tischer-Weiss can present that to their school board. It is my expectation, Mr. Robertson, and hope, like sincere hope, that when Tischer-Weiss comes to brief the Board of Supervisors on the 21st of August, that they can brief us both on the county commission study as well as the school work.
That is the intent.
So,
both of those are on the draft agenda. I think the school superintendent is going to be here as well, because he's going to be speaking to the CIP items. I think it's two different people within Tischer-Weiss. So, but short answer, yes. That is on the agenda. Yes.
So with that, I will give one point that I think needs to be looked into more. I was disappointed with the second study came out, right? So I sent you guys both of them. So the one that was sent out the Friday before the meeting, some of the scenarios looked positive, actually, right? You increased commercial growth.
They did.
Even with the higher population growth, there was a positive net margin. Now, at varying degrees, right, and levels. By the time then we got the second draft,
I think they all were positive for all the growth scenarios, right?
I remember
The margin shrunk down by each one.
I was reading it thinking, this is good, right? We're not going to be in financial ruin. And then by the time we got the next draft, the next week,
We're in ruins.
we were in ruins. Every single scenario, no bueno, right? Not good. Millions of dollars upside down. And so I was like, well, what's the difference between the weekend and then the next week? And really the biggest nugget that I found was under
Fire protection.
fire protection capital improvements. So sometime between Friday and then the next Monday or Tuesday, $33 million, something like that, was added to the growth scenarios, saying that, you know, if we did have this population growth and this commercial growth, we would need to build 2 new fire stations, and we would have a lot of capital infrastructure and construction that would need to happen. I disagree. Now, again, all of this is going to be hand in hand with our 10-year capital improvement plan and what we think we need to do. But to, you know, people only look at the headlines, you guys, anymore, right? And I know I'm a bit on my soapbox, but like one statement is taken and that's what is projected to the citizens. And so just that change of adding $33 million to that one section made it from good to bad. Just that one change. And so then when it was reported to the citizens, it's like, they're all bad. All growth is bad. This is all terrible. This is bad, right? And it was that one change. So that was the biggest thing that stood out to me. I'm hoping for a good discussion and also your observations as to the study and maybe some other probing questions or follow-ups that I can then use to guide our interaction on the 21st of October with Tischler Weiss, and maybe some follow-up questions with staff like Ms. Ring, and, you know, just see what else we need to look at. I mean, again, since that meeting, there's been several articles in the paper about, you know, why different numbers, why different population projections were used, and what number did we start with. I mean, I think some people are trying to tick and tie every single body. But anyway, I'm looking for a discussion about the growth study and your observations and other questions.
So I'll go ahead and break the ice, Chair. I guess to your specific question about that step function change in the net result, there's a footnote missing. I mean, that's a simple way of putting it. There's a level of detail below those projection estimates that change that we don't have insight to. And they did not provide the modeling factors, the estimating factors as to what caused that significant change. And I think the county is owed that information so that we can at least understand it. I don't know if it was something that was done inside the county here in terms of estimating factors, or it was something done by Tischler Weiss, but yeah, when you pointed that out to me, I went digging through the data to find out, all right, where did this change? And you got to projection estimate change, but what in the projection estimate changed? Now, clearly, I don't know if there's we need so many square feet of emergency buildings per 5,000 residents, or if there's some factor that they must have used, or not. But that's what I was looking for, sort of that modeling factor, the estimating factor that drove the projection estimate. And the projection estimate changed without understanding why. So I think we're owed that answer to understand the change. So that's my first thought on that, and I'll just go ahead and keep the mic and I'll pass it over to my esteemed colleague to my right. The second thing is, I think this report's somewhat incomplete. There are some known factors that weren't accounted for that have effect on revenue, like solar farms and some known business changes. Those weren't factored in. And so I think those need to be added in to get a more precise outcome. And the last thing I wanted to offer here was, I'm always suspicious of long-range point solutions, something that's 20 years out and somebody says $24.6 million. As we all know, the number's never going to be 24.6 million. There's not a chance in the world it's going to be that number, because there are many other environmental factors like demographic changes, interest rate changes, inflationary pressures that are going to change that. So what I was looking for when I read this report was something maybe more around a banded set of solutions that accounted for those things that they didn't address, like demographic changes, like interest rate, like revenue collection, so on and so forth. That's one way of approaching it, is have a bandwidth of solution of where the solution may land, Is it 20 to 30 million dollars with an 80% confidence around that number? Another way to approach that is with a risk and opportunity analysis. We project that we have this potential upside in revenues collections going from 93% collection to maybe 96%. That will be an upside to our budget, all right? There may be a risk on that as well. So that's another way to attack that problem is through risk and opportunity analysis that takes a point solution, actually gives it a broader likelihood of coming within a range so that we can actually do effective planning from a financial perspective. So I threw a lot at you there. Happy to kind of dissect this a little more if you need me to in the appropriate forum. But those are the three things that jumped out at me. Was thought there were some parts of the report that are incomplete. We don't know the estimating factors, the modeling factors that drove the result. And I was looking for a banded solution or some identification of risk and opportunities to have, because we know it's not going to be 24.6 million. It's going to be some number in a band.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Grace?
First thing I always look at is money.
Yeah.
Go to the fiscal impact results from the two reports,
You know what page that is?
page 8.
That's the brief, page 8 of the brief.
Yeah, okay.
You look at these two reports, and something miraculous happened between 4/8 and 4/14. And I'd like to know who's got the magic wand and what it was that, this one report tells us that we're in trouble at the higher growth rate in 2033. And that was using the 3% residential and 1% non-residential growth, 1.5. We come to you compare that and same growth rates, absolutely identical. And everything is above the line, everything. And quite frankly, I don't understand it.
Yeah, so I asked that specifically in the meeting where Tisha Rice gave their initial report. And what Ms. Ring directed me to was that Tisha Rice made those changes on Monday. I think our meeting was Monday night, the 11th of April or something. I think the original report came out April 8th, right? And then the second report came out like the 11th or 12th, whatever our meeting. Okay.
There's the date on the report.
Yeah. So Ms. Ring had called the Tischler Weiss consultant and had her make those changes as a result of last minute departmental ads. So she said that there were changes that needed to happen due to comments from schools, fire and EMS, rescue, etc. I mean, maybe Mr. Robertson, you can help us out and tell us if the difference happened due to just like comments, personnel comments, or is there some recognition of a rate like Mr. Stanton alluded to where you have to have X number of square footage and coverage for fire and EMS per X number of population? I mean, we're trying to understand why the big difference, because I don't see with that small number of change in population why we need 2 extra fire departments and, you know, a $33 million bogey that no one can explain that then sets everything on fire.
So as a general statement, because again, I'd have to talk to Tischler Weiss in terms of the specifics and what was going through their mind, as well as what feedback they were getting. But my understanding of it is that there has been ongoing feedback received and added into the document or into the data, and because of that, that's required them to make some adjustments. The feedback has come not just from the agencies, but also from the committee, the subcommittee that's been working on this. And so I think anytime that staff has gotten feedback, they provided that to the consultants and they try to plug that into the document. Which is why it's been draft, because again, it's been evolving as additional data has come in. But In terms of the specifics, I'd have to refer you to Tischler Vice in terms of what they might utilize.
So is there a requirement that you know of that requires a certain square footage or fire stations per number of residents?
Now, that's a Gary question. My suspicion is they've used, what is it, NFPA
National Fire Protection
standards?
Act.
So I went and looked that up
Okay.
in my comments. The state code says fire and rescue coverage is within the authority of local governing agency to what is sufficient. The state code does not specify a number.
That's correct.
But
It says the board is responsible for figuring that out. Now, there may be other codes
Yeah,
beyond,
I think in general they use
Like
like
NFPA kind of
NFPA
thing.
standards.
the
But,
state doesn't say specifically.
yeah, but whether or not they use NFPA standards for that specific requirement, that I don't know.
Well, let me just say, unless I put the wrong dates on the wrong pieces of paper here. I looked at the report on 4.8, and it said that with the higher growth rate of 3%, that we were gonna go negative on our numbers, around 2035. And then I looked at the report on the 14th, and we never go negative.
We never
And
want,
yet, you're talking about adding $30 million. I guess, unless I've reversed my numbers, I don't understand how we got there. And that's just looking at the two drafts. I haven't seen a final document.
So will the final document come on the 21st?
I don't know that that is the final, I believe it is the final draft. I have not heard that the planning commission has said, this is it.
Well, I looked at the reports that you sent, thank you. One dated the 4/8 on the cover, and the other one dated 4/14
Right.
on the cover.
And then we have a full report dated draft June 17th.
Well, I was trying to find the comparison pages
Right.
and charts in the new draft, and I was reading through it, and I could not find them. And that doesn't mean that they're not there, it's just that I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah.
But on these two, it was on page 8.
Yeah.
I printed the 2 pages. And it is so absolutely different. I mean,
But again, I think part of the challenge that we have in this room is we're looking at the outcome as opposed to knowing all the inputs.
Sure.
And so we have to go back to Tischler Vice and say, what were your inputs for this? And why did your inputs change? What did you add? What did you modify? What are the variables to get to these very different outcomes? And without that, we can talk all day.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's $30 million to fire and rescue for capital improvement.
and then I looked
So
at
let's
page
go and find
27.
out.
Yeah.
Who did that? Probably no.
I suspect then that would be, again, fire rescue provided some input.
Could be.
I looked at the final page on both reports, and they're absolutely identical. One thing missing was, I thought on these two summary, were the, of course, this was talking about housing units, multiple units, population, jobs, non-restricted floor area, non-residential floor areas. It didn't have student counts on it. You could find those earlier on other charts. But
Keep in mind, working in parallel with the schools on getting a better handle on the schools' information, so our document wouldn't have better information or information in advance of what the schools are doing, because the two things are happening in parallel.
well, if the school's numbers come in different, I would assume that it would go back in, since it's the same organization. they'd
Right,
have
and
to
go back
plug
in and
the other
revise
out,
it.
and then give us a different result.
Exactly, I would agree.
Okay. Any other observations, Mr. Chris?
A lot of questions.
Okay.
So is there gonna be a lookup here, I guess, for the county or for Tyler, Tischler Beast? Is that what we're headed with this?
So where we're headed is, again, they're gonna come and present to the board meeting August 21st, their report, that the county commissioned, if you will. And I'm hoping finalize then their recommendations. Even if it's two separate groups from Tischler Bice, my intention and Don's, that they also speak to the school numbers that were just commissioned recently, that again were due last Thursday. So hopefully they can present all of their findings that help us then drive, march down the field. I wanted to talk about these things with you all and have other sets of eyeballs on them so that I could ask good questions on the 21st. So I very much appreciate the conversation and making notes. I know Mr. Ball also provided a written summary of his findings from the growth rate study. Not sure if you wanted to speak to any of those.
Ms. Roundtree, if I could just quickly, so if I understand maybe the big picture concern or question, it's why the significant change from one draft to the next.
Yes.
Yeah.
With
Is
no
that-
justification. It was
Or
obvious in the report.
footnotes or
Something's
methodology.
explaining it somehow.
Okay.
Because, if you're reading the newspaper, the end of the world is coming.
Stop
if you
reading the
continue.
newspaper.
The end of the world is coming in 2 weeks because of growth.
Right.
However, you were looking out 10 years before any of the scenarios go negative. So, and I'm not saying any of these will occur, I'm just saying using their numbers and forecasts.
Mr. Robinson, could you also sort out or get to the bottom of why they didn't account for solar farms and any known business changes, companies leaving, companies coming?
I thought she,
I asked
mentioned
that.
that.
I asked that in the spring, and they just straight lined it. They took and projected based on 2021,
yeah.
which I also have a fault with
Well,
because that's just discounting a whole segment of a siding agreement and money and the warehouses, all these things that have been
Part of the strategic plan.
on a strategic plan, but also have been passed and will come to fruition, were not considered for this 10-year projection. As well as, I really had hoped that the growth task force would go a long way towards bringing the two towns' vision and population rates and growth all together. They didn't take into consideration anything going on in the towns in the study either.
I did not know that they used 2021 as the basis year. That's in the middle of the COVID pandemic. If anything, they should go back to 2019.
Yeah, none of our new revenue sources or the change with Keurig, Green Mountain, none of that was considered for these projections.
So it would be better to ask the question and get the answer before it gets asked on the 21st in front of.
Oh yeah, I think that's what Mr. Robertson's
That's what
trying
I'm
to do.
saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand like your overall question.
All right, Mr. Ball.
All right, 3 overarching comments beyond what I wrote. One is, in a role as an audit, we ought to be more interested in the input than the output. Because now we're just blind to the output, sort of like what we're talking about. We who did what, who's responsible for what, who owned the money for the modeling, and thus influenced the modeling thing. That's the front end of auditing, is to know what's going into it. Then if you know that, then the output is something you sort of say, well, I understand it now, so I'm in the dark on that. You know what I'm talking about. So secondly, in complexity, modeling with scenario planning is an excellent tool. It's about the best we can do, because human planning falls way short. So you run scenarios the best you can. What can happen if? So the growth rate thing, that's an excellent technique. I've done some research on Tischler Bice and their clients and so on, which I assume we've done too, and I find sort of positive, they're the ones. They know how to do this. So that takes you down the path to say, to me, maybe that should be an ongoing kind of thing on some periodicity that gets back to your comment about integrated strategic planning, that maybe their role should expand a little further and integrate the capital plan. And so those are future things. I thought the modeling digital device was in, where was that? Who tasked that? That was in the, which department?
Planning and zoning, Ms. Ring put out the RFP and
Okay, so
guided the process.
I don't like that. That's too close to home. It ought to be in a strategic planning department, or Don's deputy, or someplace that's sort of more bigger picture neutral to a specific function, right? I'm just saying from a planning thing, if I could, I would, compared to putting it in that area. So my thoughts were, one, Isle of Wight's a very desirable place to live. I hear that all the time. We see people coming here for all the reasons we know, other than traffic, which might be beginning to defer some. But we're going to see growth because this is a great place to live. It's managed well in spite of everything we talk about, right? This is a cool place. So looking at growth is a pretty good idea because I think it's going to continue to happen. Back to Randy's view, I find the complexity of age of Isle of Wight County, people like me and Dick, and how that affects housing, and then Randy's theme was the non-offset fully disabled veteran thing, and how the county, and those aren't added in, and those have something to do with this somehow, some way. That may be a complexity too big, I don't know. So industrial growth, so we all know this, right? The offset to our taxes has to do with tax revenue from industrial growth. So as a leader in the county, and I know the county does this. We read about it all the time, that bringing industry in and trying to do that the best we can. Positive news about what's maybe gone, the Keurig thing with rental space and the warehouses in Windsor that all my people at church hate. But focusing on how do we also make the county attractive for industrial support and operation support your tax base is a key thing. As compared to, so as our growth goes, what's the appropriate growth ratio should be for the industrial thing to keep our tax base? I don't know those numbers, but it's the concept, right? There is a number, I'm sure. So I like Tischler advice. I think they're very credible. I totally like your view about integrating these things compared to separate functions, because we see the dysfunction when it's vertical thinking versus horizontal thinking. And I think that's something the county can improve and work on somehow, some way. I don't have the magic answer. But, all my management experiences, vertical thinking is very, very short. And you see it play out in my own shipyard. We can't build ships. So it's the horizontal integrated, how do we work together using all the talents and distribute those talents appropriately and integrate all of our programs. You know that. That was sort of what I said in summary to you. Do you want more specific things that you can ask at the meeting that we can feed you, or do you feel like you're
I think we have a good start to have Mr. Robertson follow up prior to the 21st and try to get Tish Weiss to give us what we need, right? And then if there's other comments, I'm happy to surface them.
Well, I was gonna offer, if there are specific questions that you all have, if you all, kind of like you did with the treasurer, if you feed those to me, I can compile those, make sure Amy has those, and we can make sure that the Tischler Advice rep has those prior to the meeting. So if you could maybe get those to me by a week from today, then we could get those in front of her, and she could maybe be prepared to address those on the 21st as a part of her presentation. Because I have not talked to her in terms of what her presentation is going to be, but if there are questions, she can certainly incorporate the response to those in her presentation, I would think.
Chair Roundtree, Dr. Bob, he's kind of alluded to this, and I actually had this comment in my capital improvement plan, so it might be an interesting segue. Maybe we have this information, I don't know, but it seems like the biggest asset the county has is its real estate, its property, its acreage. And do we know how much cost and how much revenue is associated with developing as residential versus developing as commercial versus developing as industrial? We have that information? Okay. So we can then make decisions on the margin as to how to adjust those various growth vectors, right? No?
To some extent.
Okay.
Because you're looking at in the context of county-owned land versus
Privately owned?
privately owned land.
Okay.
And then the restrictions on both.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, do you need to know those numbers? Yes. But it's
We
also,
can't control the levers as well as we think.
we can't control the leverage.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good discussion. Thank you all for that. And I think Mr. Robertson has a few things to ask his advice about. We'll stay close. Third item under new business, and this will be the last one before we talk about our next meeting date and adjournment, because I do not want to, I think I promised we wouldn't go past 6 o'clock. Certainly 2 hours is a nice meeting time since we started at 4. So wanted to speak about CIP. So next item on the agenda. So the CIP, Capital Improvements Plan, is voted on by the Board of Supervisors. There typically is a CIP committee, which myself and Supervisor Stefano sit on. Sorry, y'all heard Lisa couldn't come today and Mr. Stefano's out of town, so that's where they both are. But this is our group for today. So CIP is a 10-year kind of action plan, if you will, of how much we're going to need to spend in capital dollars. That does a few things for you. Number one, it should be in keeping and in line with our strategic plan. As I learned in my Board of Supervisors training, your strategic plan should drive your CIP. That should help drive your budgeting, right? Because you make placeholders. Now, when you consider proffers for, possibly people who want to do business in the county, if you're going to accept proffers for like school capital improvements, etc., those things have to be in the near term, in the 5-year CIP. So we tend to look at CIP on a 10-year basis. It rolls out projects. I mean, I'm sure Heritage Park, for example, was probably on the 10-year CIP long before it was really funded, right? There's a big difference between like a hope and a dream, a wing and a prayer, right? A 10-year, like maybe this will happen, and okay, next year we're going to appropriate the money and this is going to happen, right? So I think there are varying opinions on what kinds of things should go on a CIP, and I just wanted to kick that around with this group a little bit. I'll say in the last Board of Supervisors meeting where we talked about CIP and started to try to gear up for having all the departments come in and say what their wish list was, it became apparent that we should talk more about this kind of thing. Because, for example, Christy did a nice job from the EDA and Economic Development and came up and said it could cost us $16 million to build the road, to finish out, the Shirley T. Holland Center, right? To make Parcel 2 available and usable and shovel-ready for a Tier 4 site, etc. And the new Director of Water came up and said, well, it could take X whatever to support a business and make something be shovel ready from a water perspective, because we take water from this one permit that's only 100,000 gallons a day that also serves the town of Windsor. And I mean, we really need to work together to make sure that A, we have the capital funding ready to make sure that all of these properties are marketable. B, just that we're all on the same page about what resources are truly available. And C, that affects other people, right? I mean, Don and I sit on the water board where Isle of Wight shares 25-75 with the City of Suffolk. So is connecting, it's always been the plan to connect the water line from Suffolk down 460 and get that industrial commercial area more water, right, to build. Okay, well, is that on their CIP? So if we think we need it because we want to sell this property in the next 2 years and develop it, do they know that? Right? So are they budgeting for that? It just, we really have to keep these things in the forefront and talking about them a lot. We had 3 department directors speak at our last board meeting. The remaining 3 plus the schools, I think are gonna come on August 21st. It's gonna be a marathon. No, they're not going to.
They were gonna come Thursday.
Right, so I thought maybe we could move them to the 21st, maybe not.
That agenda's already.
Yeah. So that might be the next meeting, but in any case, we're hearing from all the departments. Another thing that became pretty evident to me as we were speaking about the CIP with one of the department directors, I can't remember, but it's like, okay, so on the 10-year plan, there wasn't even a WAG for, WAG stands for it,
Yep.
it's the military term.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So there wasn't even a WAG for what a new library would cost in Windsor. So, but it should be, I think, even if it's just an estimate. And I think the previous theory or philosophy was until we get closer to the number of what it's going to cost for an asset like that, we don't put it on there. But if you're talking about 10 years out and you're trying to project, I think something should be there as a placeholder. So, kind of have to talk about philosophy and how the board feels about that. And certainly I'm just 1 vote out of 5. But wanted to just, again, you guys have had this attachment and wanted to see with your experience and just, review of the CIP currently, what things we should talk about and consider in your minds. We can start on this side since we start on that side.
No, so I'll start. I as always, I like your thinking about how you tie things together. So my experience capital plan has phases or terms to it where each one feeds the other, right? So you got the grand vision. I want a shipyard that can build a zillion ships at the speed of light. And so there's some process that continually updates that as you look way out in the future. And as you said, that's not real. But then there's the next phase that says, well, out of that, what's on the horizon in 10 years and 5 years, and then you get into what was in your budget. And those are living things. I find one of the shortcomings in business, they become static things. And then the world changes, which we all know seems to be happening more than it did back in our younger days, my younger days, not yours. So that concept of an integrated plan from vision clear back to budget that change with each other on some kind of basis certainly will be a more reliable, more helpful thing. In fact, you can put that whole thing into a modeling tool and run scenarios on it, right? Try this, try that, what if this happened, what if that happened? It's a cost to do it, but it becomes more of a living and supporting kind of thing. I didn't look at the specific issue of the plan itself, in terms of facilities, and so we know a couple things. We know from our previous discussion, the fire and safety issues seem to be an interesting one for our county, right? The schools are obviously the big elephant in the room, and no surprise there. I don't know what else.
How about from your experience with SIPSA? I mean, are we facing a huge investment for a new?
You want me to? You let me talk so you can fix it, right? So that's a great question. So, what the chairwoman was talking about is how we handle our household waste stream. So I think everybody knows what happens today, that we pay for collection goes to a SIPSA managed transfer place, and it goes into the SIPSA process that deals with it in accordance with all the rules in the world very expensively, and those rules keep chugging on. So the answer to your question is there's going to be growth in that cost for 2 reasons. One, it just happens with inflation, the cost of labor, cost of repairing equipment. There's an inflation piece of it that will grow it over time. Then there's a second piece, and SIPSA looked out way into the future and said, we're done with landfills. There's probably gonna be no more ever at least in Virginia. That's it, all the land is available. We did the whole environmental impact study. There's only one place left to grow the landfill, that's where it's at. So that's it, it's done. That takes us out, basically the assumptions, 2060 timeframe kind of thing, and then that's it. Then we stack all the stuff in our backyard, right? So knowing that, the strategy became, all right, we have to do something to extend that as long as we can, to have that ability to dispose of things, and also the hope technology comes along in that time frame and provides us a better solution, because the whole world's working on that. So we want to leverage that. So stretch it out so we can leverage that. So the plan is to modify the waste stream in such a way that the minimum amounts going into the landfill and reusable things and organic things are pulled out. So leave the details alone, but pull out the reusable things. That's going to be done robotically, not people. And then the organic stuff will be captured and processed into what we call biochar. It's a reusable pellet kind of organic material that can be used for fertilizer, fuel, whatever the markets are. So we're at the county, or SIPS is at the point of making that decision to move forward to assure the long-term, extend the long-term viability of the landfill. That's a capital investment that's going to add to our cost of disposing waste.
Big time.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after they
Now,
pass.
So that's the big picture plan. In the more of a narrow term, there's a whole, let's see, how do you say this? Every year, because of how business happens at SIPSA, there tends to be $1 million or more kind of excess in the revenue stream, largely due to commercial waste and how we deal with that. And so the current plan is for us western counties who really today our waste all goes west, it does not go into the landfill, that there would be an offset to our costs for a couple of years to keep the numbers relatively as low as they can. And then the whole SIPSA region, all 8 members, then would paying the same rate for the full recycling the best we can with the robotics and the biochar thing. Sort of the big picture. So yeah, there's an upward trend in the cost per ton to dispose of household waste. The benefit is appealing to the greenness of things, to extending the life of the landfill to the greatest degree, such that we always have a way to dispose of things, and hoping technology gives us a better idea of what to do other than what we're doing now. So we're on the verge of soon, this year, signing a contract to implement that, which then adds to the rate thing.
So I
Don knows the numbers.
didn't know if every locality would have a chunk that they would be asked to fund, like it's gonna cost them
So,
$5 billion if each county had to put up, 10 million.
so partly, and you did a great job of explaining it.
Oh, thank you. I
So-
stay awake at those meetings.
So
occasionally.
SIPSA's capital funding is capital for SIPSA.
Yeah, not us.
For us, it's operational.
Right.
So part of what we look at from a capital standpoint is waste collection. That's where our capital costs are gonna be involved, or come into play. So how much do we spend at our convenience site centers? On compactors, on redesigning the centers so they're more efficient, so that we can capture more of the waste without spending a lot more money. So one of the things that we've done in the current year's budget is that we invested additional dollars in compactors that we're going to be putting at our southern sites that are not as heavily visited as our northern sites. But by doing that, we were able to spend small dollars in capital funding, but it's going to save us hundreds of vehicle trips each year, which ultimately translate into operational savings. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. SIPSA is going to be spending the big bucks but our operational costs are
Yeah,
gonna go up.
our cost per ton.
Right, so just like the compactor issue, right? If SIP's gonna spend all the money to do this biochar thing, what are we gonna have to spend at the convenience centers to get them the waste like they want to receive it, right? So that it can
So
be,
one of the really good aspects of this is take the waste as it is. No separation, no nothing. You dump it in your trash can, it goes to SIPSA, and then the process begins. So give us it all.
Yeah, they're utilizing
Process will cover it
AI, robotics, all the modern state-of-the-art technology.
The technology takes care of that.
well, okay, so good discussion. It might not be an item for the CIP. There might not be extra money that we're gonna have to spend.
Not from the SIPSA
Yeah.
perspective, no.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Grice?
One thing that I think, when you're looking at a CIP that has to be understood, is that this capital money, every $1 million, as long as we don't exceed 5%, it has to be serviced, the principal and the interest. For every $1 million, it's $70,000 a year. That's $70,000.
That's for debt.
Hmm?
That's for debt.
Yes,
Yeah, I just wanna make sure everybody
Debt
understands that's for
service.
debt,
It's
not
debt.
just for.
because you're borrowing the money.
Yeah.
Typically, okay? And as a consequence, you gotta make sure you got the money to pay the $70,000 for each of the $1 million you're borrowing, or this is for naught.
So Randy's thumb rule he gave us, I think, was every roughly 70,000 is 1 cent. Is that
Oh,
right?
no.
Am I off? on
No,
that?
1
changes
cent
every year,
now
but-
is
$500,000.
close to
600.
600,000 now.
Oh, okay, I'm off by decimal points.
So,
matters.
so Mr. Grice is correct in terms of how we pay the debt off. What you have to also factor into the CIP discussion, and let me say this real quick, is that we try to the degree that we can, cover some of the CIP items without incurring debt. So just because it's in the CIP does not mean that it
Yes.
automatically requires us to incur debt. The whole conversation about the CIP, I think we are probably at step D. I would suggest to you that step A is understanding fully what the board's priorities are relative to the strategic plan. Because we can go off and build projects all day long, but if we don't know what the vision is, if we don't have a real handle on what the board's priorities are, we're just building projects. And so I think we have to build towards something. We have to build toward an objective. We have to make sure that we are getting those things in place that the board sees as priorities. So for example, we talked earlier about fire rescue and the impact that it might have relative to growth. Well, if the board has made a decision that that's their priority, then that all makes sense. If the board has decided that's not their priority, that's 5 or 6 down on the priority list, then maybe we're not doing those capital projects anytime in the near future because it's not the priority. And so, again, we can have a conversation about the CIP, but I think really the better conversation at this point in our not for you all, but for the county, is to get that strategic plan locked down in terms of what the board's priorities are. And you certainly said that that should be our priority, and I agree 150%. But we gotta get there.
Because a lot of these things on here will probably
Some may fall out, some may
either fall
rise
out
to
or
the
they
top
get
of the
kicked down
pile.
the road.
Exactly.
For
But
example,
I would like your opinion on the philosophy of, hey, let's put a placeholder for something like the Windsor Library replacement prior to having the exact lockdown number and throw it into a year that makes sense versus just leaving it off until you have the number. Because If you don't have that, then I have no way to project how much is gonna need to be borrowed or what we're gonna spend. I mean,
If I may, the other important part is libraries, fire stations, police stations, public, the public schools are all items that can be covered by residential properties. You have to show the need because it's over capacity, but the other is you have to have it in a number, whatever that number is, it's got to be a reasonable number in your CIP, because the developer says, I'm going to put you over 10 students at the middle school. I'd like to proffer the cost per student. If there's not something for a cost of the middle school, he can't proffer because it's just a meaningless number that he's putting out. Whether or not the county would like it, it's just not something that we can accept. So I agree that if we're going to build a library sometime in the future, get an estimated cost that's reasonable and put it in the CIP if that's the board's desire.
5 years.
Right.
right.
And the board's desire. I mean, talk about things being kicked down the road. Randy Park was on the CIP 10-year plan 10 years before I came to work at the county.
Right. And I'm sure Heritage Park before that was same kind of thing. Mr. Grice, anything else?
No, that was just, I had more questions about the CIP than I had any kind of answer for.
Okay. Mr. Stanton?
Bootstrapping on Mr. Grice's comment about the debt service, an important piece, companion piece of information that might be helpful for this plan is what the bond forecast looks like in terms of rates and pricing. And that will help you understand your levers on borrowing and how much annual revenue you have to pay to service that. So that might be an important piece of companion information that just goes with this, is what's the bond forecast.
Yeah, we do that when we get closer to actually budgeting it for the year and making the appropriation, right? This is more of a visionary exercise, I would say, than a brass tacks bond funding. I mean,
I
because,
was thinking about a 10-year bond forecast.
oh, yeah,
Probably get that, but again, there are so many factors that influence that. I don't know how true it would be out that far. I mean, it would be a number,
Sure.
but unless there was something that was forecasted that had a huge increase or decrease, the economic situation, would probably, if you wanted to have for the next 3 years, it would probably be pretty accurate.
all right, what other comments?
The last thing I had, ma'am, was not a big number, but depending on where it lands in the phasing of this, and I don't know what department this goes in, but there should be a number for the ERP upgrade.
Oh, thank you, I did make that note.
And it's probably a middle 6-digit number, low to middle 6-digit number. You sure don't want to have to throw that in the year doing transportation for schools, so.
Like 5 million, you
I
say
think,
6?
no, I think, a 6-digit number, so I would say 250 or half
Oh,
million.
250.
Not a big number, but
So in general, the ERP is gonna be an operational cost because that's a one-time expense. That's an ongoing 6-figure cost. So in general, we would not put that in the CIP because generally CIP items are like one-time.
So this isn't, it's not a big software license you have to buy that you can
It's a
capitalize.
subscription. It's gonna
It's
be
a subscription, okay.
ongoing.
So
Yeah.
there'll be an operational budget, thank you.
Learn
So that's
something.
helpful, thank you for bringing it up because
Yeah,
it's an important distinction, right? An operational versus a capital budget and what qualifies and one-time versus ongoing expense. Perfect, well, 3 minutes left. Do you guys want to meet September 8th?
I think so.
Do you think so? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am? Okay. All right, well, we will meet again in September. Thank you for all your work. We'll do a roundtable, and I'll go to each person, ask if they have anything else for the good of the order before we conclude our meeting, and I adjourn. We'll start with Marina, since she's looking at me and Mr. Stanton's taking notes. Anything for the good of the order? Anything to say? You loved the first meeting? Fantastic.
We're a good team member.
Appreciate being here. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Bond?
So I think as we sort of talked about, one of the agenda items in September will be the continuing discussion with the treasurer's office based on feedback from what was submitted, what was not submitted that should be answered, and then our additional comments. So I think those should be asked to come to me within the next 2 weeks,
Okay.
so that she has a week or so before the meeting to do that. And I certainly generate a number of them. And then two, sort of building on that, if I pretend I am the chief executive of Iowa County and just heard that discussion we heard earlier, I'd have a yellow flag in the air. I wouldn't say red, because we've done well, but I have the yellow flag in the air. I'm not comfortable.
Okay.
I have a number of reasons. I can write those down and share them with you, but I think you probably know more than I do. In fact, I know you know more than I do.
No, that's not true. Yes, please email, should you share your.
Madam Chair, just for informational purposes, the EDA's board meeting is scheduled for the 8th at 4 o'clock in this room.
Okay.
So, again, we could,
Well, we can make it Tuesday, the day after Labor Day.
I'm sorry, that was Tuesday. I'm looking at my calendar wrong. Never mind. I'm sitting down.
So we're okay on the 8th?
You're okay on the 8th.
Okay, all right, perfect.
We'll
You're
double
my
check
other
that you should be
Good.
okay.
All right, I got 1 minute. We
Okay.
got another group coming. Mr. Grice, anything else for good order?
It's gonna be an interesting next 30 days.
Yes, sir. Totally agree. Mr. Stanton?
Roger being, man, thank you.
Okay. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.